Now, my general subject this morning, as you know, is the York Mystery Plays. I have a specific brief within that, but one of the advantages of speaking to a group like this is, I think it's probably fair for me to assume that the vast majority of people in this room are familiar with the York Mystery Plays as a well-established part of the heritage, cultural landscape of the city of York. Now, a few just little reminders here for self, just going back to my own records here of Mystery Plays. And I'm going to give a little bit of a big up to Margaret Scott and the archive at the National Centre for Early Music, which is a wonderful research resource for anybody who is interested in digging into the modern history of the plays. And I think it's probably safe to say it could be utilised more, couldn't it?
It could. People started collecting in 2000, but it's everything going back to 1951, which is when the plays were revived. So it's the modern mystery plays, if you like. You won't see many medieval images at all, but I stuck the odd tiny one in.
Yeah.
But I'm very fond of it, and I'm there on Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, there you go. Make an appointment, go along and just see what's there.
In fact, to the archive. Thanks to them.
And there are sound recordings there, so many of which I contributed myself, of interviews with people who were involved in some of the earliest productions of the revived mystery plays, going back to 1951, which I actually started collecting in 1999, which seems like a couple of minutes ago, and suddenly it's 27 years ago. You know, where's that gone? Probably better try and achieve something. There is an impression, perhaps, that the plays, as part of our cultural landscape in the city of York, they've held this position really since 1951. There's maybe a little bit of an impression that that position is secure, and that they are, well established, and they will just keep happening. In actual fact, that's not the case. The plays are always a huge project to put on, and the foundations are perhaps a little bit more shaky than we might like to think. I'll come back to that one later. But you're also aware, of course, and Margaret has mentioned there, that although we're looking at a modern tradition of playing, the roots of mystery playing go much further back. They go back into the medieval heyday of the city in the 14th and 15th centuries. And I think it's useful for us just to look a little bit. Everything I want to say today kind of harks back to that medieval inheritance and what we owe to those earlier plays. So I'm going to go through this. We're always looking towards modern productions, but we do need to pay some recognition to the medieval history of the plays. At this stage, I do need to apologise slightly because it's been very much in the news of late. But I have a form of Tourette's. It's not a non-controversial form of Tourette's, but if I do make strange noises and stammer, that is the form of my Tourette's, and I will apologise for that. I've made my peace with it many years ago, as John knows. That's the thing. So, let's go back to look at mystery playing. Now, the York Mystery Plays are unique, but they come from a period of time when mystery playing, or Corpus Christi playing, as it was more accurately known, it should be more accurately described, was a common practice throughout the northern cities of England. And I've just put up a little list here of places where we know there are established records that mystery playing took place. You see, York is one of those centres. Now, we know that these centres were centres of performance because the references are there in the civic records. Maybe the guild records, maybe personal correspondence. But as you can see, it was a peculiarly northern trip. Oh, I've lost Hull. There's Hull there as well. Where's Hull gone? Perhaps somebody better go and check, I don't know. But you can see it's widespread across the north of England. But if we look forward and say, okay, well, we know that they took place here, where do we have any kind of text of what was being done? These were plays. If we look, oh, Paul's back again. Oh, there we go. Where do we actually have some text? Where do we actually have some record of what was being done? Not just that something was happening, but we can see what was being done. And you can see it's a much shorter list. The evidence for what people are actually doing is much more fragmentary. If we move forward again, we'll say, well, where do we have any actual intact scripts of the whole of what was being done? And this is now a very, very short list indeed. We've got York, we've got Wakefield, we've got Chester, and we've got this curious other medieval manuscript which is referred to as the End Town play, which gives us the text for a wonderfully complex full cycle of plays, but it can't be associated with any particular city, the End Town. It is an enigmatic manuscript. Now, York, here we are, number one, where else would we be, is really quite unique. We know that anyway, but what is it? What's that uniqueness in this respect? Well, we have an excellent set of guild records. We have an excellent set of civic records. Okay, we don't have as much as we would like, but you know, we have an excellent set of civic records. We have an excellent set of church records. And extraordinarily, by a whim of fate, we actually have a fairly complete manuscript of the play scripts. And this is it. Well, this is a facsimile copy of it. This is the thing, and it is an extraordinary document. And the fact that we can sit in this room here today is entirely down to the survival of this manuscript. Accident of fate. So, okay, the manuscript that we have is called the Register, and I've got a facsimile of a page here. Now, this is where I have to recognise here with Louise in the back of the room there. Here's me talking about paleography when Louise quite literally wrote the book. However, let's just have a look at some of the features of the manuscript. This is an entirely representative page. It's from the Skinner's... is it Skinner's? No, it isn't. It's from the Entry into Jerusalem. It's from the Entry into Jerusalem, isn't it?
Yes, in the parish magazine there's a small clip. Okay, sorry.
There you go. It's an excerpt from the Skinner's play. Let's just look at a few of the characteristics of the obvious things. It's handwritten, of course. The pricking and ruling in the manuscript shows that this was written by a professional writer. This is a scrivener who's written this. It is a very high quality document indeed. As well as the text, it also contains some music. And I think you've had a presentation from a very good friend and long-standing colleague of mine, Paul Toy, who could speak far more eloquently about the music, mostly because he can sing. I sing in very much the same way that I speak, and that is without using any real notes. So, an old one, but a class. So, my little title for this section of this one is The Language of the Plays. Now, when we're talking about doing modern productions, there are some obstacles that we have to overcome. And the first of those obstacles, really, is the fact that when we look back to this medieval manuscript, we've got something which is not immediately readily performable. It is written in a form of Middle English. So it is the language of the 14th and 15th centuries. So it is not the Old English of the Beowulf manuscript, which goes something along the lines of What? We ga dening ga dagum Theodor Cunningham Thrim Dithron and Ellen Fremidon. A language which is very, very different, and if we listen to it, it would sound like a foreign language. So that's the Old English. Language has moved on here. We're in the 14th and 15th centuries, and we're looking more to the language of Chaucer. When April with his sure sweater. That's much more lyrical sort of sounding language. However, it's not quite the language of Chaucer. This is very definitely a northern dialect. a writer called John Trevisa, writing in the late 1400s, spoke about the northern language and the difficulty that people have understanding, the difficulty that southerners have understanding northern dialects. And he describes the language of the north in a wonderful way. He says the language is full of gearings, wafflerings, and getting grisbitings, teeth grinding, and he said it worked. The big thing is what we're looking at here is yet again something which is very uniquely York. It's northern. It speaks to us. If we look at the manuscript in a little more detail, within the manuscript we've got old forms of letter shaping. Again, things that we read. It's a representative of a language which is in movement, in evolution. We've lost some of the characters that are used in the Old English manuscripts. The F, the abbreviation, the letter for the sound ETH, F, has gone. But we still have the thorn. Yeah, if I can find one on here somewhere. There's a thorn still, the TH sound, and the yog is present as well, the Y, the Y, or the GH sound. Interestingly, within this manuscript, not only do we have the thorn letter, we also have the digraph TH as well. So we're showing that language is evolving during this period of time. But also in the manuscript, you see we have these interesting abbreviations. This, on the left-hand side here, we have the hand is called secretary. And Louise can tell us much more about this. It's the hand of the 15th century. And on the right-hand side here, we have a later edition as well. This is in a 16th century hand. So it shows that the manuscript, the register itself, is a working document. Why are we labouring this so much? Well, the language of the plays is important. When we start to think about how we're going to perform things today, and let's remember, this kind of conversation had to take place in the run-up to the 1951 mystery plays. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but the language almost is the first obstacle. Scale is the second. But language is the first problem that had to be overcome. This manuscript is not easily readable in this format. I'm out of practice with it, and Louise will say, it takes a lot of practice, does it? You've got to keep doing it. So, when we're confronted with something like this, we want to perform it. This is from the Harrowing of Hell. You might pick up things like Johannes Baptista. Yeah. Interestingly, the language is Middle English, but all the stage directions, all the named characters, that's all done in Latin. So it's still this kind of scholarly thing here as well. They're speaking in English, but they're referred to in Latin. Later on this year, we're going to be doing the plays again. So when we look back to, I'm performing in the Noah play. And you get referred to people like Noi and Uxor Noi, Noah's wife. Yeah? So here we've got John the Baptist, we've got Moses. I've not quite worked out what this one is. This is Diabolus, Primus Diabolus, and should have seen Secundus Diabolus. It's not immediately accessible. Now then, talking about things that bring us to this particular point in time, this morning, where we're sitting here this morning. Oh, that's a fancy changeover. I said we are here because this manuscript exists, and in actual fact, it's fair to say we're here because not only did this manuscript exist, but this lady here, the rather redoubtable lady, Lucy Toulmin Smith, who was an extraordinary scholar in the 1870s, undertook the epic work of taking this single volume and turning it into a published book. Again, this is a lady who deserves a talk all on her own. She's a remarkable character. First librarian at one of the Oxbridge colleges, Manchester, I think it might have been. And basically when it represented this Victorian antiquarian community who made such a contribution to the platform of scholarship on which we're still basically working today. Thanks to Lucy Toulmin Smith, suddenly instead of one single manuscript in a private library somewhere, we have published editions of the York plays in libraries all over the country and literally all over the world. It's kind of, that's the point when mystery playing becomes a viable project, if you like. However, if we look still, we still do have some obstacles of language here. On the left hand, go back. On the left-hand side here, we have the original manuscript. On the right-hand side, we have the transliterated version of Lucy Toulmin Smith. So you can see that this language here is still something that we struggle with to follow. He had a deleter with him to Dale, and housed him homely with the hender. He said, Lord, alack this son and lay the past no in pace to life last under, for no myself has seen the hale. The language still is unfamiliar to us, so there is still work to do. We can't go and pick this off the shelf in the same way that we could perhaps with a Shakespeare or a Ben Jonson or something like that. There is work still to do. Just another little illustration here. This is the angels and shepherds. Brethren, hast attack his head in here, while you will spec and specify. Send me welcome thus without and where. Again, you see the characters are carried over here. We've got the thorn carried forward. Don't have a yod on that one, but you see there's still a degree of, if you like, skill that was required to interpret those. So, let's go forward now to 1951, the modern story of playing. This is my specific brief today, if you like, to talk about modern productions of the plays. Now, how it was that the plays came to be performed in 1951 is an interesting story in itself. I'm struck here by the fact that in 1951, the city of York, the population, the world in general, was sitting in relation to the end of the Second World War in very much the same way as we are currently sitting in relation to the pandemic. Now, I am not in any way, shape or form drawing parallels between those two events at all. But that time gap, it's an interesting parallel. If we put ourselves back into the 1950s now, people will be sitting in relation to the end of the war and the problems of the war and the impact on people's lives in the same way that we are now sitting in relation to the impact of the pandemic. And I have had, as I mentioned, the privilege of speaking to many of the people who were actually involved in the 1950s productions. And those audio recordings sit in the archive, and many of the people, of course, that I spoke to back in 1999, 2000, 2001, they're, of course, no longer with us now. So there's a tremendous resource there, and it reminds me of the importance of collecting oral histories while you can. I have a feeling that oral history forms a part of your general interest anyway, your remit anyway, as a local history group. So I would just nod to that on the way past and say, yes, that is very, very important work in itself. Now, 1951, the City of York decided it would celebrate those plays. I beg your pardon, celebrate the centenary of the Great Exhibition. By hosting, sorry, I'm losing my thread a little bit, Festival Great in 1951, it's the centenary of the Great Exhibition. And it was decided that, it was actually an Aaron Bevan, I think, who promoted the festival, that the country would celebrate culture, looking forward, looking back, celebrating the best of our roots, and York became one of the regional centres, a cultural city of the north of England, And June the 3rd to the 17th, York became one of the regional centres of a whole host of programmes that we put on. There was a lot of music, there was a lot of drama done, there was a lot of art exhibitions, there was, of course, in your own area here, within your remit, just down at the end of the road there, we've got the York Festival Flats, which many of you will be aware of, I'm sure. Bright new housing and new approaches to architecture and things like that. And interestingly, a group of people got together and said, well, what's going to form the centrepiece of the festival in York? And it was decided, after discussing various options like performance of a Shakespeare play, making a musical festival, musical celebration part of it, it was decided that the York Mystery Plays, these medieval plays, which were known about, but in a relatively inaccessible form, uniquely York, a great national treasure, a cultural gem, that what would happen is these would be performed again. There were some obstacles to overcome. A, we've talked about the language. B, the scale of these plays is enormous. If we were to sit now and start reading these plays through, we would still be here tomorrow at about the same time. There's 20 plus 24 hours worth of drama there to get your teeth into. So the scale is enormous, and there's also, very interestingly, a little bit of wariness, which is evident in some of the commentary at the time. As soon as you say to people, the medieval plays, it's a kind of a, not sure that that's really the kind of thing that a modern audience wants to engage with. There was a preconception that because of medieval, the drama would be kind of crude and simplistic, influenced a lot, if you like, by Shakespeare, the rude mechanicals. That's the kind of lens through which people were looking. What's the other lens that people look through? Well, of course, most people's experience to Middle English literature is through Chaucer. And of course, through Chaucer, what does everybody look at? They look at the Miller's Tale. What's the Miller's Tale about? It's about bottoms! So therefore, if it's medieval literature, it's going to be about bottoms. Do we want bottoms, everyone? You have to kind of... It's really fascinating to go and look at people. There was a writer at the time, a gentleman called A.L. Lashley, who wrote for Yorkshire Life, and he's got some very, very interesting commentaries, because there was a wide interest in these plays. And when you read through him, I think he reveals a lot of that kind of attitude of the time, that wariness of, yes, we want to celebrate our culture, but we've got to almost kind of make it clear that we're not them, we've moved on, kind of thing. So there was an understanding of the medieval roots of the plays. There was an understanding of the form of performance. Now, as I say, I tend to make a few assumptions here, that we know that in the medieval heyday, these plays were not performed in a nice, convenient theatre space, because nice, convenient theatre spaces didn't exist. What happens is they were stuck on the back of wagons and taken through the streets of the city. They were performed not by professional actors, but they were performed by the tradesmen, the guildsmen of the city of York. So they were very much with the people's plays, performed by the people in the people's spaces, the city. And because there's a little bit of awareness of that, because it all smacks of a little bit of a lack of control, a slightly anarchic approach. So the decision was taken that a simplified version of the plays would be performed in modern English, and they would be transferred into a fixed stage setting. And this is where the decision was taken to put them on in the open air, nod still to that medieval origin, but they would be performed in a controlled space within the ruins of St Mary's Abbey in the Museum Gardens. And I dare say it's straw poll time here. I can just see a show of hands who's seen some of the mystery plays in the Museum Gardens. Well, yes, lots of people. So That's the thing. That we have to kind of smile to ourselves as we go past, because that, if you like, is us as a modern society trying to control these rebellious medieval ancestors of ours by bringing them into an enclosed space, putting them on a fixed stage, getting your audience, getting them sat down, and let's not deny it, getting some money out of them as well. So it's a ticketed modern performance. Now, we could spend a whole morning talking about the process of how those plays were actually brought into fruition. There was a huge amount of work done, and I didn't really give him sufficient acknowledgement as we went past. The next great name in whose debt we stand is this fellow, Canon Purvis. Canon Purvis actually took the Lucy Toulmin Smith manuscript, transliterated that again into a modern language form. Now, there's a lot we can talk again about that process, but that's not what I want to focus on here. We made it into a modern form, performable form, and then took that 20-odd hours worth of... There's 48 different plays in here, by the way, 48 different plays. And he translated that and moved that and edited it down into a performable couple of hours of drama. Great piece of work, and that script itself was brought to a realisation by a director, E. Martin Brown. Again, these are people in whose shadows we stand. Martin Brown had that vision of how he wanted it to appear. And behind Martin Brown, of course, as always, there were a series of great women. Hensy Rayburn, Geraldine Stevenson, and Nora Lambourne. Hensy Rayburn, I think, was Mrs. Martin Brown. Geraldine Stevenson was the movement coach, and Nora Lambourne was the costume designer. Tremendous work put in to actually create how this medieval spectacle was actually going to appear. And again, there are very interesting set of commentaries on how that work was set about and what she wanted to achieve in terms of creating a pastoral look for those associated with the country, and the word is a more sophisticated look for those associated with the town dwellers. So again, you see, we've got this kind of mirroring that goes on. A great deal that we could talk about. One thing that I do want to nod to as we go past is that the desire was always to get the people of the city of York involved in these plays. There were some professional actors who came in, and there were many actors who went on to become famous professionals in their own right, who cut their teeth, if you like, at the York Mystery Plays. We know of Judi Dench, of course, but Mary Ure was there, Tom Bell was there, Taniel Evans was there, all in these 1950s productions, and there are more people as well. The interesting thing for me, and it's a little nod that I have to recognise as I go past it, the 1951 production itself is a little bit of a reflection of the city as it stood at the time. Local amateur drama groups were invited along, and settlement players in particular were very much active in that group. And of course, around the city at the time, we had a very, very active network of youth clubs. And many of the people in the youth clubs themselves had an interest in drama, and they had drama groups and performed plays and things like that. And they were invited along to participate as well. The girls were invited along to work front of house and sell the programmes, and the boys were invited along to work backstage and build sets and things like that. So there's a little bit of social commentary going on there as well. Now, I say I do like my medieval pages, don't I? Oh, hold on. This is the cover of the programme. So there is a nodding, there is a recognition in the presentation of the programme, the way in which the plays were performed of those medieval roots. This is all stuff which I have shamelessly copied from Margaret's archive. Shamelessly.
It's a good one though, isn't it?
It is a good one. Now, there is a whole different talk in the number of different ways in which the plays have been staged in this fixed format since. The Museum Gardens chapter is just one of many chapters. This is a photograph from 1992, the first year that the plays, since 1951, left the Museum Gardens and they went into the Theatre Royal. A controversial move in itself, a great deal of debate and angst at the time, and it was a problematic production in many ways, but people still managed to make it happen. 1992, this is Robson Green playing Jesus at this stage, and as we can see, the advantages of the modern theatre modern theatre was taking advantage of, if you like, to stage these plays. We fast forward again to 1996. Many of you, I'm sure, will remember the artificial controversy which was whipped up in the news, because lo and behold, this is an old friend of mine, many of you will know her, Ruth Ford, sadly again no longer with us, and she's playing God. Can God be a woman? Goodness me, where will it all end? It's an extremely good production in 96 as well, and Ruth was a tremendous actress. But these kind of modern productions, the fixed stage productions, have an ongoing history. And another chapter started in 2000, the Millennium Plays, when the plays went into York Minster for the first time. And that was a terrific production. And interestingly, it was that Millennium production which started the, if you like, it started the incentive, the momentum going. One expression of which was the development of, here we go again, Margaret's Archive. Am I bigging it up enough for you, Margaret?
Yes. There was some money around in the Millennium Lottery, that was big.
There was indeed. And this is the extraordinary, one of the images which stands in my mind, and I was fortunate to see the plays twice. One of the extraordinary images in my mind is Noah and the Flood, where you've got this enormous football pitch size, 2 football pitch sizes, sheet of blue ultramarine silk creating the flood, and it was extraordinary just to be there and see it. It would have filled, what, this room twice, 3 times over? Fantastic. And 2012, the plays go back to the Museum Gardens again. I actually took part in this one. I'm not on that photograph. That was one of this gang of people here who crucified Christ. Ferdinand Kingsley and the bloke off Coronation Street, playing the devil. Can't remember his name.
Graham Hawley.
Ah, grand fella. Grand fella he was. Most recently, 2016, back in the Minster again. Now, I say, each one of these productions have their own stories, they have their own memories, they have their own, you could do a talk on each one of these, but I just want to make it clear there that variation, that moving around from place to place, is symptomatic of the fact that the plays do not have a single identifiable character or momentum in their own. Some people talk about, so it's York's version of Oberammergau. Oberammergau has its own momentum. The York Mystery Plays don't. They have to almost be recreated every time. The Minster thing, well, shall we do? And yes, okay, let's do it. Theatre, well, they might think, shall we do? Well, I don't know. The production in 2012 in the Museum Gardens was a joint project between Riding Lights Theatre and York Theatre Royal. So there isn't this momentum that will automatically ensure that they take place. Now, we're going to whip forward now. Back, forward, sideways. I'm going to step outside and look at the development of a counter-tradition. If 1951 set the scene of saying, right, we're going to do these plays in a more modernised form, we're going to consolidate them, we're going to shorten them down, we're going to take them into a controlled space, we're going to present them in a... I will say sanitised, actually, although that's possibly unfair. That's possibly an unfair way of saying it. But if they're in that kind of control space, then there is another way of doing it. And from the late 1980s onwards, we see the development and emergence of a counter-tradition. It is a counter-tradition which in itself sits in relation to a wider cultural movement which is going on at the time. And it is this movement which is back towards historically informed performance. And it's particularly evident in terms of musical performance. So when we look at the work of people like Roger Norrington, the London classical players, these are things we just happen to have in my collection, where it's almost kind of like a back to basics mentality. It's going back, in musical terms, it's going back to the notation of the composers, it's going back to the instruments of the original players, it's going back to the time signatures, it's going back to recapture, recreate something of that sound as it would originally have been heard by the composer and the first audiences. And although the two things are not connected, it is very much in my mind expressions of that same kind of mentality. The back to basics. There's something that we have lost. There is something between us and the desires, the aims, the intentions of the original creators. It's relatively easy to do. Immediately there's problems with that. It's relatively easy to do, he says. There are problems with it in musical terms. You can have original musical instruments, you can recreate musical instruments, you can get back to original scores and things like that. In terms of the drama of the mystery plays, it's a little harder to achieve. We still have to deal with that problem of language, and we have to deal with that matter of how do we actually stage this very, very complex thing. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on that shortly. I'm going to do it for time spot on. Good. Here's a photograph from wagon plays in, this is, I put 2006, I think that's 2002. No, it's not. It's 2006. I beg its pardon. This is one. From the 1980s onwards, associated with various people, production started to go back onto the streets, started to go back onto wagons again. Now, I do have to nod here and say that, you know, during the 1950s, all plays were put on wagons. There was a little bit of a tradition to that, to again, not to that medieval route. But this, from the 1980s onwards, we start to see actual productions of cycles of wagon plays, where a number of the episodes were presented by different, unique groups. They were staged on wagons and they were taken through the streets. And here is one of the wagons from 06. It's the wagon for the Last Judgment. And once again, see familiar faces. There is Ruth Ford up there, and she's playing God again. Goodness me. It's really just illustrating here some of the stages of wagon playing and the sophistication that you can achieve on the back of a wagon. Here is one, this is from 2002. People again who you might have some experience of yourselves, old friends of mine, Dr. Rob Wright, Joanna Huntington, now Joanna Huntington Wright. This lady here is, at the time she was known as Nina Malachak. She is now more widely known as Janina Ramirez, and she's on the telly every 5 minutes. So that is a production of a fellow called Tom Gobbett there, who was a tremendous artist who did all the stage work, so that's good. What can we say about wagon playing? Well, it is a very challenging style of drama indeed. It's drama without a safety net. If we look at what we can achieve on a fixed stage, You can get your audience, you can control your audience, you can get everybody sat down, you can put them in places.
Wait, don't interrupt. I'm going to go turn on the heat.
That's champion. You're all right, Louise, nobody noticed. I think you got away with that one. Yeah, wagon playing is drama without the... bathed in. It's without the safety net. You're taking drama out to the streets to meet people where they are. The slides are slightly different order for some reason. In many ways, it's a daft idea. In many ways, it's a daft idea because it creates all kinds of problems for us. When we start something in motion like this, it's completely different to setting something going on a stage. We take a play, okay, fair enough, stick it on the wagon, off it goes. Let's do it now as a series, bring more wagons into play. They have to follow each other, they have to follow each other in sequence, they have to go along a set route. Suddenly timing becomes an issue. And I'm going to dive back to the question of timing in a moment. This really is, if you like, the focus of what I want to talk about today, the problematic area of wagon playing in a modern city. Just to expand a little bit more about the history of wagon playing. They started in the 1980s in the city of York, and they were a largely academic project, largely entirely academic project. I'm going to mention again my friend Paul Toy, who was involved in those early things when he was at King's Manor as a scholar there. And what we had was, effectively, we've got groups of academics parachuting into the city, bringing their wagons with them, and the groups that were involved were York, obviously, Leeds, Durham and Lancaster. And they brought their wagon players into the city, and they took them along something like the original route. They took them down Stonegate in the city, and there were all kinds of problems involved in that. This really is where you definitely need Paul Toy, because he can tell the wonderful anecdote of, I think it was 1988, when the wagon plays were staged that weekend without giving due regard to the calendar of the rest of the city, and it clashed with Racers' Day. Gets a bit lively, doesn't it? And there was much jolliness in the city in the day, and there was much heckling and much banter between the audience and the actors and things like that. Yeah, kind of as there should have been, you know, kind of as there should have been. But some of the academics took a little bit of exception to that, and one of the academics did happen to brain somebody with his umbrella. The brainer then took no further part in the action. The brainee went off, came back with a load of his mates, and there was a full-on fist fight at the end of Stonegate, near the Minster. And that was one of the things which might in itself... Was anybody present at the fight? Thought you might have been, Louise, because you're a lively lass.
Not that year.
Of course not. That was one of those pinch points that may well have been the end of wagon playing in the city of York at that point. But there was a move forward, and I'm going to mention again another name that's very, very critical for us. I don't have a photograph for her. A lady, wonderful lady called Jane Oakeshott from the University of Leeds, who had a real interest in the performance of medieval drama. And she came to York and said to a little group of people in the early 1990s, at a time at which mystery playing was, you know, hovering on the edge, you know, we just finished in the museum gardens, just about to move to the theatre for a production, nobody was quite sure how it's going to do. She came and said, well look, she said to a group called the Friends of York Mystery Plays, why not? Let's do a community production. Let's go back to basics. Let's go back to roots. Let's try a community production of the York Mystery Plays. Let's get not academic groups, but community groups from the city. And the project was taken on board. And movement was made, and the city authorities, the police, who had great reservations, were persuaded that a wagon play production could take place. And that wagon play production took place in 1994, and this is where I appear in the picture for the first time, because I was drafted in at the last minute to join the cast of my local church and play a part, because they needed somebody with a big voice and a big gob, slightly large personality, to play a part in the entry into Jerusalem. And I did that, and at the time I was working in insurance with my good colleague John, with a very secure, nice, steady job. That was it. That was going to be my life. We'd got 2 kids at the time, got mortgage, got all of that. I started the Mystery Plays in 1994. I'm instantly hooked. 2 years later, I chucked my job up. I went back to university, studied medieval literature, and I've been doing mystery playing ever since. So beware. That's the kind of impact that can have on you. I make light of a very serious period in my life, but it took me to my own, if you like, my own journey of faith as well. Was inspired and informed by that. So that's the kind of impact it's had on my life. 1994 was a great success. It would be because I was in it. And we came back again in 1998. And in 1998, the surviving craft guilds of the city of York got involved and got behind the project. And they became back involved again. And at this stage, I've got to mention his name, haven't I? Yeah. In terms of huge debts, we do owe a huge debt to the wonderful Iverson Wheatley, who, for all too brief a period, I was very pleased to call a friend, who was an enormous figure right at the centre of the place, and his name deserves to be remembered, because he was a big lad, wasn't he? In many ways. Getting the guilds involved was a key thing, because of course the guilds do have this continuous existence in York. They are the link right back to those medieval roots. The merchant adventurers, the merchant tailors, the butchers, the builders, the scriveners, the cordwainers, the freemen. Who have I missed? I missed somebody.
Masons.
No.
Carpenters.
No.
Merchant adventurers.
Carpenters.
Those still exist. All the carpenters, masons, plasterers, tile thickers, everything like that, they are part of the Guild of Building now. If you look at the badge in the Guild of Building, it's a big thing with all these different spots. They recognise those. I'm looking at the people with a continual tradition. And I'm sure they'll come back to me. There's 7 extant guilds anyway still in the city. The guilds getting behind the plays was great, because we had then this continuous structure. We've got something for the first time that looks like an ongoing organisation structure. And it is the guilds of the city of York that have been behind productions every 4 years ever since of wagon plays on the streets. 2002, 2006, 2010, 2014, 2018, 2022, neatly jumping over the problems of the pandemic, and here we are, 2026, happening again this year. Last weekend in June, first weekend in July. My very small contribution to the story is I performed in 94. In 98 I was the director for the St Luke's play that year, which was A Harrowing of Hell. In 2002 and 2006 I was the overall kind of pageant master cum artistic director for the plays, and that really got the things going, that kept things going. Now, some of the problems of producing these plays in the modern city. What we're going to do is, because I actually want to kind of show a spreadsheet as well here at the end, where I'm going to go through my thing, and then I might just, if I might just occupy your chair briefly, sir. Bringing plays onto the streets is now a problematic thing. The City of York is a difficult body to deal with. We've got this difficult... Obvious statements of the day. Rain is wet, the tide goes in and out. The City of York Council, don't do that, the City of York Council. Getting the permissions that we need to perform on the streets of the city is a very, very complex process, and it starts almost the minute the last plays are finished.